You now are listening to the audio podcast of Prisoners of Hope, the antidote to what ails your heart. I'm your host, Dr. Deborah Brazeal. So come on in, pull up a chair, and open up your mind as you get ready to receive the download that hope will bring. Oh, hey, it is a good day. And welcome to the continuation of Pathway Stories. I'm interviewing Dr. Deborah Brazeal, and she's talking about some impactful things that have happened along her pathway. Enjoy.
I looked in the cabinet and I found a card and it said, "You are stronger than you know." And I thought, what is that? Who is that from? And, it goes through saying, we have a power and the time has not come yet to use it. But
Mhm,
it's biblical. It's not, the power comes from Jesus.
mhm, yes.
Um, and then it says, "So when you feel like giving up and throwing in the towel, know in your heart that your strength is on its way to the surface. One day you will look
Mm,
back at this moment and see how strong you really were."
wow.
So I'm looking at that and it's signed "Love You, Deborah Girl," which is Jody. And so she was sent into my life when my husband, Marty, had
Mhm,
frontotemporal dementia. And he had just been diagnosed.
mhm,
And I was already at my wit's end by this time, and I wasn't part of any kind of support group or anything like that. I didn't really know where to turn. And a friend of Marty's went to Jody's house, and he's a painter, and he was doing some work on Jody's house, and he saw a picture of Jody and her husband and asked her about him. And Jody said, "Well, that's my husband. He's deceased. He had FTD." And so John said, "What? FTD? Like frontotemporal dementia is super
mhm,
rare?" And she said,
mhm.
"Yeah," and told him a little bit about it. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, my friend's wife is struggling right now because
Yes.
her husband has FTD. Can you talk to her? Can you call her?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to." And that's when this angel entered my life. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, really, without Jody and Lori, also they were friends as well. Both of them lost husbands to
Mhm,
FTD.
mhm, mhm.
Um, I just, I don't know. I don't know where I would be. I don't know how I would have made it. Now, Jesus was there.
Mhm,
And, you mentioned slowing down
mhm,
and sort of being in a desolate place. Well, I didn't have very many people around me when I was going through this, and some people actually came up against me, and I just couldn't figure
mhm.
out. I mean, this was brutal enough, but why were people turning on me?
And
And
that's when
yeah,
we became close, remember?
we became close friends, and I felt like I was in the desert. So, and
Mhm.
I understand that God can drop you off in the desert because he wants you to communicate with him.
That's right.
And,
Wow.
and that's what I did. I would
Mhm,
listen to praise music, I would put on my headphones, and I would imagine myself ascending into heaven surrounded by butterflies. And I imagine
mhm,
Jesus on the throne. And, um, I just imagined the afterlife. And, I thought about Marty um, and I've told you this, but I had the most amazing dream. And look, this is what kept me from just bolting out of there and, starting a new life somewhere where nobody would know
mhm.
me, like just escaping the whole situation. Because if you don't know FTD, Um,
Mm,
I can't even describe how horrific it is, but the
mhm,
dream is I was, I was in the Middle East somewhere, and I was in this little bitty shack, and there was a man in there guarding the shack, and I wanted to escape. It was claustrophobic. I needed to get out of there, and he kept telling me, "No, please don't go." And I could tell that it wouldn't be a good idea if I bolted, but, sometimes you just kinda go crazy, and
mhm.
I just ran outside, and the sun was hot and just blaring down on me, and I looked up on this hill of sand, and it was the Taliban, and,
Wow.
I realized, "Oh, that's why I wasn't supposed to run outside, because I'm gonna draw the attention of the Taliban."
Mhm,
And so, of course, I turned around, I ran back in, and this Marine said to me, "I told you not to run." But he said it very gently and
mhm,
kindly, and, of course, the Marine is Jesus,
mhm.
and I had many other dreams, but that one is the one that stood out and told me, "Okay, you need to stick with me. Be with me. I am here
Mhm,
100%."
mhm.
And, it's still the journey, it was an odyssey, and it was still just horrific, when your husband becomes like a Stephen King character, um,
Mhm,
and he becomes creepy, and
mhm.
he's been the most loving, kind artist, server, yogi, gentle, man, and he turns into someone who's homicidal and suicidal.
Wow.
And it really took everything I had not to run, Deborah. And, I didn't want to abandon Marty, but at the same time, I didn't know if I was going to survive it. And just, mentally in my head of being trapped and, having to deal with, well, is he gonna blow the neighborhood up? Am I gonna come home one day and,
Yeah.
he set
Mhm,
fire to the house? I mean, you just
mhm,
anything could happen. And living with
mhm.
that kind of stress is
Yes.
so detrimental. And, of course, you want to flee, you want to run, like, was it Elijah that ran away and hid in the cave? I mean,
Yes, 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 yeah,
that was me. I
yeah,
turned into Elijah,
yeah.
one moment, top of the world,
Be
you know
because Jezebel said something, "I'm gonna kill you."
Yeah, because Jezebel said, "I'm gonna kill you, by the way. You haven't escaped me." And he ran, right? That's all it took.
That's all it took.
And
But
that's
do you remember the day that, that our relationship changed, the day that I came to your office unexpectedly?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
remember that day? Could you
Yeah, I
share
do.
that? That's amazing?
That was an amazing day. So, um, I didn't tell anybody at work what I was going through, and this went on for years, by the way.
Mhm,
And, I just pretended like nothing was happening. And so Deborah came in, and I think she could tell I'd been crying because I would just randomly cry, like anywhere, anytime, but in the classroom, of course. And then I'd have to kind of like pick myself up. I always brought
mhm,
makeup with me,
mhm.
you know. So Deborah came in and we just started talking. And it was, very heartfelt.
Mhm,
And what's going on? Well, okay,
mhm,
so wow,
mhm,
okay, there's this thing going on with Marty. Okay.
mhm,
And and we talked about it.
mhm,
And I felt like I could open up.
mhm,
And with others, some of my other colleagues, I just wouldn't have done that. But I think because Deborah and I share this faith, um, it just made it easier because I knew I wouldn't be judged or condemned. And, just
Well, on my end, there's 2 lessons for you guys to understand. Her her willingness to open up and my willingness to walk down that hall. Her office was way away from mine.
it
I
was.
mean, you couldn't even walk by it, okay?
That's right.
And to walk down that hall and knock on the door and say, "What's up with you?" You know, because God sent me to do that.
Oh.
So pathway help. You got to be the help someone needs. You got to listen. Because for some reason, I'm in my office. I'm like, I got lecture. Because we're both, college professors. And the Holy Spirit said, go talk to Deborah. And I'm like, I am talking to me.
Oh.
You know who because I was arguing with him and I went down there. And yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Uh-huh.
So that's amazing because you were at your wits' end that day.
Oh my gosh, Deborah, you were so wonderful, and it was just so I needed support, but I couldn't really reach out, to many of my colleagues.
Mm.
So when you answered Jesus's call to come to my office, it was everything to me.
And we were always, close acquaintance, but we became real
Mhm.
close after that. And we're
That's
like,
right.
all these years. I mean, we know these
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, that was th I mean, all in perfect timing, right?
Right.
Um, but we were both dealing with issues earlier in our life, and, um, I mean, it would have been great, if we had been tight before then.
Yes.
And then, of course, you moved to Colorado.
Right. I
Like,
retired.
wow, even further away. But, um we maintain that bond, and, the other cool thing we have in common, which we've talked about, is that we're Deborah and Deborah. We're
Mhm.
named after her
Mhm.
in the Bible
Mhm.
and, like, consciously. My
Mhm.
dad chose that name, and I'm sure your parents chose that name for you
Yeah.
for a reason.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
And, so
Yeah.
it's interesting
Mhm.
that we have kind of some of these parallels. You've certainly experienced a lot of trauma and grief in your life too.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. So was that the end of your, holding your breath, or were there other incidents in your life where you had to go to God?
Yeah, so I'll go back in time now.
Okay.
So I moved out to Cal Poly, and I was in my 20s, and I can't say I fell away from Jesus. I didn't.
Mhm.
Um I still went to church, but with all the things I was going through at work and personal life and so on, I really should have been praying more, listening more, slowing down more. My life was busy, and yeah, I was just running around everywhere. And I really don't do well like that. I really have to.
Mhm.
Today, I have my practices and I meditate and I pray and so on. Well, I didn't back then.
Mhm.
And so I had three things that happened in rapid succession. And I can only imagine this was Jesus saying, hello, hello, one thing, two thing, third thing, takes three with Deborah. Okay, that's fine. So, and I won't go into detail on any really except the last one because that's what changed me. But I had chronic fatigue back when nobody believed you. Nobody understood that that was actually a condition. And it literally laid me on my back. I was still able to teach somehow. I made it happen. And I met a man through a colleague at work that was able to heal me. And there was a certain protocol to follow and etc.
Mhm.
Next thing that happened, the next year, I'm out running and I was physically attacked. A man had been stalking me, I
Mm.
suppose, and he
Mhm.
dragged me into the orange grove.
Oh gosh.
Um, I had my gun on me, yes, and
Mhm.
we'll kind of skip that part of it. although, although, I didn't shoot him, okay, but I did escape rape and murder. He did try to strangle me.
Mm. Wow.
So that
My
was
goodness.
that's a long story and, you know, quite a tale, and I didn't end up in jail either, which is really good because I had a gun on me. And this is California, right? So, if I had been in Alabama, they would have put a medal on me.
That's right.
But not out here.
You
Um,
have been the local hero.
yeah, no kidding, no
Keys
kidding.
to the city.
Yeah, and I kind of, I got over these 2 things, and I just moved on. And then, I had done a photo shoot, with a girlfriend and up in, oh gosh, north of LA at this, studio, and it was my first time to do anything like that, a real professional photo shoot, and so excited. And my girlfriend, JK, was in the celebrity crowd because she had done some modeling and so on,
Mhm.
and so we were going to a barbecue someplace in Bel Air. Rod Stewart was gonna be there. I mean, just crazy stuff, and I was so excited, right? And so I got done with, the shoot and, got in my car, and she was in her car. I was gonna follow her, and, so I was driving, and I thought, "Oh, yeah, I need to put my seatbelt on," and I did, and she went through a light, and then the light turned and yellow, and I thought, "Well, okay, I'll go through the light," and I did.
Oh,
And I looked, I mean, all of a sudden, something came into my field of vision that looked like a train. I thought, "Where did
oh
that train come from?"
my
Uh,
God.
and then I just blacked out. And then I woke up and I realized that that train was a van that had turned left in front of me. Um, and by the way, that was a light that had an arrow, a green arrow. And so that person turned in front of me on a yellow light.
Oh gosh.
And so, needless to say, I was in a lot of pain. The airbag hit my eye, and I didn't know it at the time, but I just couldn't see out of that eye anymore. And I went
Uh,
to the ER, and it was not in a terribly good area. And then eventually, of course, I came back down to Orange County, and I realized that I just didn't know if I was going to be able to see out of the eye again. Well, okay. This got my attention, and I was distraught, to say the least, and my mom was horrified, and, you know, I I really hadn't thought about God a whole lot lately, and, my brother had this, book by the very Reverend Paul Zahl, and it was called Who Will Deliver Us? Like we all need saving.
mhm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think we do. Well,
Yeah.
I remember reading that, and I kind of confronted my humanity for the first time, really,
Mm,
in that you look at it and you're like, wow, I am that person. I do need saving. And of
mm,
course I had been saved before, but there's
mhm,
nothing like this just sort of out of control, out of the blue, something that happens to you. Like with
mhm,
Marty, like with your sons. I mean,
mhm,
something that happens is out of the blue and it just throws you down. And not that I think God is a God that hurts you to get your attention. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that um, I really awakened, and it turned out I couldn't get surgery on that eye until right around Thanksgiving. And I wanted to go to UCLA because of the Jewel Stein Institute and their reputation.
mhm,
And it was by a girlfriend that I even got there in the first place. And
mm.
and I didn't know if I'd be able to see. And my eye kept getting darker and darker, and I had a great department chair at the time, and she said, "You need to take this semester," or this quarter at the time, off.
Mhm, mhm,
And I didn't want to do it, but I did. And, so I went to get this surgery, and when I woke up, I could kinda see something, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, it worked. Thank you, Jesus." Right?
mhm.
Well, because what happened is I had a traumatic cataract and he replaced the lens and,
Mm,
that I can see. Now there was a lot of pain around it. I had a bruised cornea, so that, it wasn't over yet. Um, but it did eventually completely heal, even though some doctors said you'll have pain forever, and they it sounds like doomsday, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but here's the crazy thing. So after my surgery, um, the doctor said, "There's somebody here that wants to see you." I'm like, "What? Who?" Like, my boyfriend was there, but what do you mean? And there was a guy in there, and he had, the surgical mask, and I said, "I can't see your face, I don't know who you are." So he pulled it down, and it was one of my students, my former
Wa
students. Now, he had been in my class, an entrepreneurship
wow.
class, and he and his good friend, were working on a project together. And his friend's father had started this company called Star Surgical, and guess what they manufactured? Um,
Corneas.
lenses.
Lenses, yeah.
Lenses, right? Because I had a traumatic cataract and I had to have my lens replaced. The
Mhm.
kind of lens that they invented is foldable. So what that means is you only have to make a tiny little cut in the eye, you pop the lens in, and it opens like an umbrella. It just pops open, as opposed to the old lenses, which were not foldable. And it needed a much larger cut in the eye and could do damage, but it's better than not replacing the lens. So I'm looking at this guy, this student of mine, and I'm thinking, so you came up with your friend's dad, but he was in on the business plan and so on. You came up with this innovation in my creativity and innovation class that saved my
Mhm.
eyesight, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I
you talk about being humbled, right?
I'm
Wow.
listening to you. There's been so many pathways. A seatbelt. Someone told you to put a seatbelt on.
Mm,
Your ability to be strong,
yeah.
like that guy. Your student that has this technology. My son is blind in one eye,
Yes, I do.
so I'm actually listening to this. I'm like, wow,
Mhm.
maybe Alex could be helped by this. So we'll talk about that off
We
air.
we
But
need yeah, we need to talk
wow,
about that because,
wow.
it was, I mean, technology is amazing, and
Hmm.
remember, this was, gosh, 25 more years ago, and, technology
Wow.
changes, and I also had an enlarged pupil, and I used to wear colored contacts to sort of camouflage it, and also because of the sun coming in,
Hmm.
and all these years later, Deborah, in 2019, it was right before COVID, um, they have a surgery where they go in and they stitch up the pupil. And I said to the doctor, "I've been waiting 25 years for this surgery to come about."
Wow.
And then I had that surgery and no more problems, and my eyesight is even better, and so yeah, there could very well be something out there for Alex that we haven't explored.
Wow.
The eye does heal. I mean, it is a fast healer, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was not
Wow.
something out there
Well,
for
his
him.
optic nerve is not receiving the information, but,
Mm,
from the first
got it.
accident. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
you could read the book, The Accidents, because
I sure did. What was it?
oh my god, I describe what happened. But, there's so many things, miracles you have described. There's well, stay tuned to the third part of this intriguing interview. Until next time, God bless. My hope is that this journey has been fruitful and you're able to take it and apply it to your life. Until next time, tune in again for the Prisoners of Hope podcast. God bless.